Today, we're turning the pages back, literally, to one of the most unique and creative games ever made. It's a cult classic that broke the rules, shredded the panels and punched its way right off the comic book page. We're talking about Comix Zone, the beat-em-up that turned Sega Genesis into a living, breathing graphic novel. And guess what? Comix Zone just turned 30. Yep, it was released in 1995, and even after 3 decades, it still looks and plays like nothing else out there. So grab your sketchpad, throw on your favorite grunge track, and let's dive into the rad, rebellious, and totally off-the-wall world of Comix Zone, 30 years later. Let's go back to 1995. The Sega Genesis was nearing the end of its legendary run. The PlayStation and Nintendo 64 were about to change gaming forever. But Sega still had one last ace up its sleeve. A game so bold it looked like it had leapt straight off the pages of a comic book. This was the era of attitude. You had Sonic with his finger wag, Earthworm Jim with his wacky humor, and in came Sketch Turner, the ponytailed punk rocker and comic book artist who ends up trapped in his own creation. That's right, Comix Zone wasn't just a beat-em-up, it was a meta-adventure, a fourth-wall breaking, panel-punching journey through a hand-drawn comic. It oozed 90s style, from the grungy art to the industrial rock soundtrack to the self-aware dialogue. It felt like it could have been on the same shelf as Spawn, Lobo, or Image Comics. The setup is wild. You play as Sketch Turner, a New York comic book artist and part-time musician. One stormy night, lightning strikes his drawing desk, because of course it does, and his evil comic book villain, Mortis, literally escapes the pages and traps Sketch inside his own comic. Now, Sketch has to fight his way through his own panels, battling the creatures he drew, solving environmental puzzles, and trying to make it to the last page, all while Mortis messes with him from the real world. It's such a cool premise. And the way it's presented, with Sketch jumping from one panel to another, characters speaking in word bubbles, and onomatopoeia effects flashing on screen, makes you feel like you're living a comic book, not just reading one. Comix Zone is a 2D beat-em-up at heart, but it's way more than just punch, kick. Each level is laid out like a comic book page. You move from one panel to the next, sometimes by jumping, sometimes by falling, sometimes even by breaking the panel borders themselves. Combat feels weighty and satisfying. You've got punches, kicks, throws, and environmental interactions, like knocking enemies into live wires or crushing them with falling debris. You can also pick up items, like grenades, knives, and bombs. And Sketch's pet rat Roadkill plays a huge role. You can send him into tight spaces to hit switches or reveal secrets. Honestly, more games need a rat companion. But here's the twist, the game is hard, really hard. Sketch takes damage from everything. Even ripping through panels or breaking walls hurts him. You only get 1 life per playthrough, and continues are limited. You can't just button mash your way through. You have to think like a comic book hero and a strategist. This difficulty made the game short but unforgettable. Most players didn't finish it back in the day, but they remembered it. This is where Comix Zone truly stands apart.
Hand me the sacred spice, mutant.
Take it, but leave my ultravision goggles. I cannot survive without them.
So you want to live in a comic book?
Greetings, puny mortals.
Welcome to the Comix Zone. Slay fiendish villains that get drawn back in page by hellish page. You'll feel right at home.
From the darkness of the oven, the slain beast.
We will live another day.
Comix Zone, only for Sega Genesis.
The entire game is designed to look like an actual comic book. Characters move between panels, backgrounds are sketched in real time, and every hit has a big crack, or wham, to go with it. There are dozens of small touches. The page flips when you complete a level. Sketch rips through panels when there's no door. Bosses even taunt you from the page borders. And let's talk about the animations. For a 16-bit game, everything is so fluid. Sketch has little idle movements, enemies have unique designs, and the transitions between panels are smooth and stylish. Even today, Comix Zone looks cool. Pixel art games try to recapture this level of detail and stylization, but this game nailed the comic aesthetic before most developers even tried. It was ambitious, it was risky, and it paid off. Comix Zone had a killer rock-inspired soundtrack composed by Howard Drossen. It was grungy, heavy, and fit perfectly with the game's rebellious tone. Even better, the Sega CD version came with a real rock remix soundtrack featuring vocals and live guitars. It was ahead of its time, blending digital and physical music experiences years before that became common. It wasn't just background noise, it added to the energy, made the fights feel more intense, and gave the game its unmistakable attitude. Seriously, if you've never heard the Sega CD soundtrack, go check it out. What makes Comix Zone so special 30 years later? It took a wild idea and committed to it. Every part of the game, the visuals, the music, the interface, worked together to sell the comic book concept. And it influenced games that came later, titles like Beautiful Joe, Shatterhand, Guacamelee, and even Marvel's Spider-Man toy with comic-inspired visuals. But Comix Zone was doing it back in the mid-90s, on 16-bit hardware. Even indie games today borrow from its style. You can see the DNA of Comix Zone in modern pixel art platformers and action games. And there's always been fan demand for a sequel. For years, Sega fans have dreamed of a modern version, whether it's a hand-drawn 2D update, a gritty reboot, or even a roguelike spin-off. Recently, Sega announced that it's revisiting some of its classic franchises, and could Comix Zone be finally getting some love? An animated movie was announced in development in 2022 by Sega and PictureStart, aimed at bringing the characters and world of Comix Zone to a new audience. Not much has been revealed yet, but the idea of Sketch and Mortis coming to the big screen is kinda amazing. There's also been talk of a potential Comix Zone revival as part of Sega's retro reboots, alongside titles like Jet Set Radio, Streets of Rage, and Golden Axe. So, will we see Comix Zone return as a modern 2D brawler, a stylish animated series, a remaster? Who knows? But 30 years later, people still care, and that says something. So there you have it, Comix Zone, 30 years later. It may not have been a blockbuster, but it was bold, it was stylish, and it pushed the limits of what 2D gaming could do. It's one of those rare games where the concept is so strong, it stays in your head for decades. From its comic book world to its rock soundtrack to its unforgettable rat companion, yeah, we didn't forget about Roadkill, Comix Zone left its mark. So here's to Sketch Turner, to late-stage Genesis creativity, and to the game that let us punch through the page before we even knew how cool that was. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what's your favorite moment from Comix Zone? And what would you want from a modern sequel? Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay sketchy.